the 300 level section at Gillette Stadium, and we enjoyed talking Patriots and breaking down games and discussing transactions. So we figured we'd start a podcast and see where that takes us. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pat's 300 level pod for up to the minute updates and commentary on news of the day. So just to start, Kevin, just wanted to see what your overall thoughts were on the Patriots versus Texans game this past Sunday.
Yeah, I think overall thoughts was first of all, win is a win, so I really like to take that into consideration. But it wasn't a great one, and I think we're both in agreement over that. It was very sloppy for the first probably 40 minutes of the game, but they were able to turn things around at the end, so they were able to come back, beat the Texans, which was put them in a good spot, so that way they're 2-3 now. So it was a really sloppy win, really kind of a bad win against the Texans, but it's kind of been their house of horrors there down in Houston. So coming away with a win is good overall, and getting them just another win, that win column. I'm just really glad to see that, and hopefully it puts them in a good position for the Cowboys coming up next.
Yeah, I agree completely. Like you said, a win is a win. If they had ended up losing that game, I think that would have been devastating just for what they were doing or where they plan on going the rest of the season. But like you said, a win is a win. In the end, it all counts the same. Mm-hmm. I think part of it might have just been they had so much preparation and all the hype going into the Bucs game that all that energy draining into that it might have. I was worried that we might see a little bit of a setback this week. Mm-hmm. Especially with the defense, and that's pretty much what we saw, at least in the first 40 minutes, like you said, of the game. But overall, there were some things that were encouraging in the game. There were some negative aspects, but hoping that they can get fixed up for this upcoming game against Dallas, which is going to be another big game. So overall, what were your thoughts on the offensive line? I know that was a big talking point going into the game, especially with the Patriots being without 4 of their 5 starters, and considering how bad the offensive line has been so far this year for them.
Yeah, no, I think that was probably the biggest storyline going into this game. You have 4 of the 5 starters out. The only starter on the team right now was Andrews going to the game. So I'm trying to see how they're going to piece it together, how they're going to look. And actually, they looked really well. It was only against the Texans, so I wouldn't go thinking like it's against some great pass rush or anything like that. But they did their job. They, for the most part, did really well in this game. Mac wasn't hit nearly as much as he was in the rest of the games. I think it was a 25% pressure rate, which was by far the best for the season. Again, it is against the Texans, but they did do really well. I think Kajus, they could be on with something there. And I think he really could be pressuring some of the other members of the offensive line there. So I really liked what I saw with him. I really was questioning kind of why we didn't see more of him at the start of the season, because he did look like he kind of had some progress in preseason in those games. So it looked like he kind of has the ability to do well. And he's got great feet. If you actually paid attention to how he looked on there, he's got probably the best feet and footwork out of really any of the offensive linemen that they have. So they could be really onto something with him. And Haran played a lot better at left tackle than right tackle. And for some players, just one side of the ball they just play better on. I don't really know exactly the reason behind it, just probably their brain or their footwork or anything like that. But he actually looked a lot more comfortable on the left side of the field on that part. So it was really encouraging. If Wynn or Owenu or Haran have some sort of kind of mishaps going forward, at least you know that you have the ability to kind of switch things up. And last but not least, Steady Teddy. He looked really well in this game, and I was really impressed with what he did in this game. And it's not really too surprising. He was great with them. Not great, but he was good, dependable when he was starting with them when Andrews was out 2 years ago. And he started, I believe, with the Dolphins last year. So he is a quality offensive lineman to have. So he's a good piece to have as a backup because he's pretty steady. That's why we call him Steady Teddy.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I mean, this is sadly, I guess surprisingly, the best their offensive line looked all year. Mm-hmm. And it was with with missing 4 of their 5 starters.
Mm-hmm.
So like they only allowed 3 hits, which compared to the Tampa game, Mac got hit, I believe, 13 or 14 times. Only allowed 1 sack. Overall, they look great. Like you said, Steady Teddy. He had the 5th highest Pro Football Focus passing grade of any guard in the NFL last week. He's been very dependable when he was with the Patriots. Like you said, he wasn't a Pro Bowl center or anything. He was definitely a little step down from Dave Andrews, but Dave Andrews is also one of the best centers in football. So he gives you consistency. When the Patriots re-signed him this year in the offseason, I was a little disappointed at first because it made it seem like they were re-signing him because David Andrews is gone. And I know both of us are big Dirty Dave Andrews fans. So I was a little disappointed at first, but when I saw that they were bringing him back, I thought it was a really good move. He definitely provides very good depth. He can play any of the inside offensive line positions, both guards and center. And he'll just give you definitely some consistency and dependability. Kajust and Haran held their own. They both play very well. Granted, this was against one of the more inferior defenses they played with Houston, so it's tough to say what this really will translate to going forward. But overall, Kajust and Haran played well. For Mac to only get hit 3 times compared to 13, 14 times last weekend, just being pressured almost more than a third of his snaps before, to be pressured less than a quarter is a huge improvement. So overall, I thought they look great.
Yeah. And I think one thing we just have to keep in mind though, too, is that the Texans defense doesn't have the type of players the Bucs have in the interior.
Yeah, so, exactly.
We do have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but it was nice to see in that right direction.
Yeah, I agree. And then one thing this is something that you and me have been calling for since probably the first half of game 1. But seeing how well Carris did and how much of a weakness the right tackle spot has been since Trent Brown has gone down it makes you wonder, why hasn't Carris been playing left guard and moving Onwenu to right tackle, where Onwenu last year was one of the best tackles in football.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if maybe that makes them think maybe they'll do that going forward. Maybe not, because we've been calling for it since week 1, but it's might be an encouraging opportunity, because that might help shore up the offensive line, at least until Brown comes back.
Yeah. And I think another thing to add on too is that we could be seeing here, because Onwenu has looked like he's taken a step down. So it could possibly be he just may not be as effective at left guard as he was at right tackle last year. Some players don't translate as well from tackle to guard, or vice versa, guard to tackle. So that could be another thing. He may actually be better suited to play right tackle and be better off having Carris in the guard. And that was something we saw years ago with Cannon. I remember both you and me did not like him at all, because he was like a sieve in there. But when he was moved to right tackle, everything kind of shored up and he looked a lot better. So some players just, they're only good in one spot. It's not like they're versatile enough where they could play. They can play, but they're just not as effective in one position as they are the next.
Yeah, the one thing I would just add on to that, though, is just with Onwenu, he actually looked pretty decent the first few weeks of the year. It was just the Tampa game where he was pretty horrendous. So it wasn't that he was bad the whole year at left guard. It probably maybe a step down from where he was last year, but he was also rated one of the best tackles in football last year. So it might just be that position, or it might just be one bad game mixed with a little inconsistency here and there. But
yeah. Going forward on, I think one of the other big storylines after this game was just the defense. What were your thoughts on how they looked? What kind of turned things around in this game?
They were pretty horrendous the first 40 minutes or so. 35, 40 minutes. They were making Davis Mills look like, I know you're a huge Davis Mills fan, but they were making him look like a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, which maybe one day he'll turn into one, but I don't think he's a Pro Bowl quarterback, especially considering last week, granted it was against a good Buffalo Bills defense, but he had less than 100 yards passing. I think he had a 40% completion percentage or something like that, 4 interceptions. And to make him go from that horrendous performance to this extremely good performance of over 300 yards passing wasn't encouraging. They were without Mills, which definitely might have contributed to it, having to go with Joanne Williams starting out opposite of JC Jackson. But they couldn't get any of the key stops. They got some stops on third down, but they allowed all three attempts on fourth down to be converted. A lot of times there were some third down plays where it was third and long and they allowed it to be converted. They just couldn't get those gotta have it moments. In the second half, they were able to a little more, but it was just a little discouraging. And then especially the defensive backs, after trading Stephon Gilmore, you thought maybe Belichick had some faith in them considering how well they played against Tampa. But J.C. Jackson was pretty bad. Williams was horrendous. McCourty had his worst game in years. So just hoping it's just that off day, off game. Like you said, they historically haven't, or the last 3 years, they haven't played well in Houston. So maybe it's just something to do with that. And it was just an off game coming out of that really hyped up Tampa game. But it's something that they'll definitely need to correct for next week again, or this upcoming week against Dallas, or they'll be in trouble.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you kind of hit on most of those points. I think one of the things that was just so discouraging was that, like you said, they got to have it plays. They got them in third down a lot in the beginning, and they just kind of went right through them. And even fourth down, I think they were 3 for 3 on fourth down conversions. So just the ability to make stops was something that they were not able to do. I think something that helped turn around like the last 20 minutes of the game was, or really the last half, was after that flea flicker. Joanne Williams was benched, and they brought in Bryant in the game and had Jones playing the other boundary and have Bryant play the slot. And I think that actually helped shore up the defense a lot better than it was before. So I think that did help a lot. I think we saw last year Bryant, they had a lot of faith in him. They used him a lot. And he looked pretty well last year, except for that one game. So we may be seeing more of him. So I think I'd be interested to see how he looks if Mills is out for a longer period of time. But I think that corner position was kind of the weakest part for that. And then again, Judon had an outstanding game. He's probably the best defender on this team at making plays. So that was just another encouraging game from him. I think anytime he's out there, he's rushing the passer, he's creating pressure. I think he's been probably the best signing that they made this offseason.
I go one step further and say he's not only the best defender on this team, I think he's the best player on this team. I don't think he's going to get it, but I think through the first 5 weeks, he should be in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. I know he's second in the league in sacks with 6.5, but it's all the little stuff that doesn't show up in the stats as well. If you actually watch him each play, a lot of times he might be jamming a tight end or jamming a wide receiver or running backs just so that they can get off their route before he pressures, or he's trying to get offensive linemen off their assignment. So a lot of times he's not like a traditional pass rusher where he's just rushing, trying to get to the quarterback. He's doing all those little things on top of it, which is just even more impressive. It's, if you actually watch him, seeing him get those tight ends or running backs or wide receivers off their marks is pretty impressive. And he's doing this even sometimes dropping into coverage. He's not your traditional Chandler Jones who just rushes the quarterback or someone like that.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of nastiness in him too. He's kind of got that Ravens kind of swagger to him. So I think that's something that's good for this team to have. They don't have as much of that right now.
Yeah. And then even when he doesn't get sacks, he's getting pressures. So for instance, this week he had 4 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. And then he also, in addition, had 3 QB hits. We saw this in the Miami game where he might have had 1 sack, but he also had those pressures where he forced Tua to throw an interception. So even when he's not making sacks and getting on the stat sheet, he's having those plays that are impacting the game. So I guess another talking point after the game was, or just during the game when you were watching it, but even after, is just like some of the Texans coaching decisions of what they were doing. At least to me, it seemed they were doing well, at least in the first half, but then they were trying to get too cute, and that ended up costing them the game. They had some very questionable decisions where even in the moment, like there's sometimes after the fact you can second guess it, but in the moment you're just wondering what the heck are they doing?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think at the beginning of the game, they were really aggressive. They kind of showed that They're probably thinking, what do they have to lose for going on fourth down? They're playing the Patriots. They need everything they can get to try and get ahead and beat them. So going for it would be really helpful for them. So I think I really kind of like their aggressiveness from that point. But like you said, they got really kind of cute at the end, having that fake punt where the punter didn't get back. They did the kind of that rugby punt, and then credit to Lawrence Guy for actually causing that block punt. It's not something they mentioned on the TV coverage, because they just kind of showed that it being hit into the I think the long snapper's helmet or whoever it was at that point. But if you actually go back and watch the film, Guy pushed him back probably 4 or 5 yards into him, so that's what helped cause that block. Again, kind of the TV coverage lately has been terrible, but that makes sense because they're not been getting the kind of premier games like they used to.
Yeah.
So, but that's besides the point. And then the other kind of decision again would be going for that 57-yard field goal where the kicker already missed, I think 2 extra points.
2 extra points and had a kickoff out of bounds.
Yeah, so that was something.
He was coming back from an injury.
Yeah. Where I was wondering why you're doing that. That helped kind of set the Patriots up in better field position to be going down for the attack. So I think those are the 2 biggest kind of question marks about what you really saw in the game. And then they also kind of got a little bit more conservative when it got towards the end too. So it didn't seem like they were kind of having their foot in the throttle as much as the beginning.
Yep. No, I agree completely with everything you said. I think part of it is just a rookie coaching staff where just thinking too much. And I also wonder if part of it is him overthinking it because of just knowing he's going up against Bill Belichick. So trying to catch everyone off guard or trying to throw a wrinkle in that maybe Bill hasn't seen of trying to catch them off guard. But
yeah,
I think if they just I liked, as a Patriots fan, I didn't like it, but as a football fan, I liked their aggressiveness in the first half. Like you said, they pretty much have nothing to lose. Without Tyrod Taylor, they're probably not going to make the playoffs. They're already 1-3, so they have nothing to lose going for it. And I like that aggressiveness. But then, like you said, they started going conservative, and it kind of makes you wonder why. They were doing well, and then they just changed things up. But
yeah, how much of the Nick Cassero effect do you think had on kind of this game plan or how they were attacking the Patriots? Because one thing that I'm not sure if they showed or not, but there were reports afterwards that Cassero actually had a headset on during the game, so he was kind of involved in this. So do you think he was involved in kind of what the Patriots were showing and kind of breaking that down real time, or do you think it was more of just we should be doing this? Or kind of just listening in what was going on during the game?
That's a good question. I actually didn't hear about that, but it makes sense. Cassero was actually pretty involved when he was with the Patriots too. Before he was in the front office, he was also a coach, so he has some experience with that. My guess is it was probably a little bit of both. Him helping prepare them going into it of what to expect, and then also in some situations, possibly saying what to do or what he would suggest. But I think he might have had some effect, especially in the first half, considering how well the Texans just completely obliterated the Patriots secondary and just how they put up so much points in the first half compared to how well the Texans typically do. So I think it might have had some effect. But
yeah. So what are your thoughts on Mac Jones in the 5th game of the season?
Thought he looked good. He did have some of those throws that you kind of wish you could have back. A couple more than usual, but he had the one interception, which I know you and me are both on agreement on, that it wasn't a good throw, but also part of it was on Aguilar. He should have fought back for the ball. He kind of just stayed back. And that's sort of been something we've seen with Aguilar his whole career, and especially so far with him in New England. He just doesn't seem to fight for the ball. There's another ball, I think in the first half, either first or second half, where he actually got a catch, but Mac threw it to him and he just let the ball come into his body and it was almost tipped. Whereas if he actually extended to catch it, it would have been an easy catch. So just things like that, it makes you wonder, start to question the signing a little bit, and wonder if last year him with the Raiders, along with him in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, if that was more of just an aberration versus who he really is.
Mhm.
But overall, Max showed poise. He had some great throws. Again, another 70+% completion percentage game. And it just makes you wonder, like, Mac, at least to me, has been showing that he's by far the best quarterback of the rookie quarterbacks, and he's understanding more and more and progressing each game. But it just seems like the Josh McDaniels is holding him back a little bit. There's a one time where it was first down inside the red zone and 1st and 10, and they threw 3 straight screens on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd and 10. And it makes you wonder, why not just let him throw the ball? He's shown that he makes good decisions, and it just seemed like they were holding him back. I saw something that it looked like one of the screens might have been an RPO. What was that?
There was one of the second screen. He actually, it looks like he may have actually checked into that play. So it might have been a different play at the start of that.
Is that the one
like
where
he checked into it?
Yeah, there was one where it looked like it could have been an RPO, but it didn't look like he had, where if it was an RPO, that Bolden actually would have had a pretty clear lane for a first down running, but it didn't look like he actually even was planning on running the ball based on one of the guards was pulling. So it might have been that play, but just makes you wonder, like, at least from what he's shown through 5 weeks, it shows that he can handle it, and just keep giving him more and start to take the reins off him, let him throw the ball.
Yeah. No, I think I agree mostly with what you're saying. So I'm still every week I'm impressed by what Max shows. I think he would be better off, and he has to make mistakes, because that's the only way you're going to learn. So you would rather have him be making mistakes and learning from them than not making them, and then having some situation arise later on in the season when it's harder to try and fix those mistakes. So I think one thing that he will probably be working on, especially after this week, is just knowing when to throw the ball away quicker, instead of either taking a sack or kind of forcing it in a different spot. So that Aguilar throw, Aguilar should probably definitely have that. And it was also the way that Aguilar ran the route too. I think it looked like Jones wanted him to be actually come in for the ball more, where he actually rounded out the route a little bit more. And if you actually look on the tape, if you actually go to Boston Sports Journal, Greg Bedard actually gives a good kind of breakdown of this play itself. They're running a mirror route where Myers and Aguilar are running the exact same route. And if you actually look at the difference between the way Aguilar runs it and the way that Myers runs it, Myers is a lot more smooth, a lot more cleaner. And if it was actually ran that way by Aguilar, he probably would have had the catch. So I think kind of that route running ability by Aguilar needs to actually be kind of worked on, and kind of cause that. But like I said, I think Mac will just need to kind of actually work on knowing more when to get rid of the ball or throw it away or throw it in the ground. That's something that comes with time. That's a rookie kind of thing to kind of go through and see. So it's not anything that's concerning or anything like that. But he was able to lead them down the second week in a row, and this time actually come and get the win. I still think that last week against the Bucks, they could have done that, but that's last week's discussion for that. But I think he showed a lot of poise, a lot of maturity with that. And then I kind of like too, he had the blood dripping down his chin onto his jersey while doing this. So kind of showed kind of the character and stones that he has compared to someone like Jimmy G.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if that was Jimmy G, he'd probably be on his way to the hospital already. But one more point that I just wanted to say is just on the offense. Like, I still feel like Kendrick Bourne is one of your best receivers. He has he's very shifty, and it seems like he can get open and get yards after the catch.
Yeah.
And he's been being utilized more and more each week, but it still seems like they could be using him more. And that's just something that I've been questioning from week 1.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see he's being used more, and he's on pace to like set a career high in receptions and yards and everything. But I still feel like with his skill set compared to the rest of the receivers on offense, he could definitely be used more, at least used more strategically.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think of all the 3 main receivers, he's the one that if he gets the ball, he's more likely to do something with than Myers or Aguilar. I think part of the reasons why he's been slow to come on just for getting the ball in his hands, he's had a lot of kind of mental mistakes in like preseason in the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
where he's not on like the same page as what the play is, or he doesn't know where he's supposed to be going. But at some point, you have to try and know you can put the ball in his hands one way or the other. So either doing end arounds or simple straight kind of plays where you don't have to have everything complicated. If he's a playmaker, you need to get him the ball, make some plays, which is kind of the same sort of opinion I had last year with Harris, where Harris last year was the best offensive player on your team. You get him the ball no matter what. You have him do wildcat, you have him do screens, you have him catch the ball, run the ball. You want to give the ball to your best player as many times as you possibly can. So I think that's something we both agree on. I think hopefully it looks like it's starting to kind of show up now.
Yep, I agree. So I think next thing is just 3 up and 3 down. Who are your 3 up?
All right.
Who would you say your 3 up are?
Yeah, I'll go with all 3 and then I'll kind of explain them all.
Okay.
So Matthew Judon. My next one would be Ted Carris. And then my last one would be Nick Folk. So I know we discussed a little bit beforehand, but I was just thinking during this, I completely forgot about Nick Folk and kind of the impact he had in this game. So Matthew Judon, like I said, he is probably the best defensive player on this team, one of the best players on this team. And I can't imagine where they'd be without him. He's a huge playmaker for this team. He gets to the ball. He's always causing pressure. He's getting penalties called against the offense for holding, and they're missing a lot of the calls too, where he's being held a lot too. So just the amount of pressure he's able to give, he is probably one of the best edge players they've had in a while, and he was a terrific signing. Ted Carris like I said, he was steady Teddy again. He had a bunch of pancakes during the game too, so he was able to kind of throw some people around, which was nice to see. And I'm interested to see after this game what they might do, knowing how he looked in this, and they might not have to. He might not have to force the hand because right now, the report from today, and today's only Wednesday, but Wynn and Wenu are still out. So I'm not sure what the reason is behind that. So I don't know if both are still COVID related, but you would have to think that whoever was just a close contact maybe had tested positive afterwards. And that's the reason. And then the other one that was vaccinated, it would probably have to wait the whole 10 days if they're still testing positive. So Carris could still end up starting next week just based on that. But
and then also going along with that, Mason, even though he was at practice, he did not participate. So we don't know if he'll be ready for Sunday as well.
Yeah. And then just the last play, Nick Folk, he made a bunch of field goals. If it wasn't for him, they wouldn't be in this game. And even he's made, I think he missed. Did he ever miss extra point this game too?
Yeah, he did.
He had a missed extra point, but he made all the field goals. And other than really that missed field goal last week, which was in the rain, he's been probably the most steady kicker I've seen in quite some time. We never even saw this before with Gostowski, and Gostowski was a great kicker, and even Vinatieri.
Yeah.
But Folk has been just automatic. Whenever he's going out there, it's just right down the middle, as long as it's 50 yards or less. But this game, he had, I think, 252 yards and maybe 3.
Yep.
So, but it was in a dome. So I think he really helped keep them in this game. So who would you say your 3 up would be?
We're going to have some similarities. And so I think number 1 is obviously Matthew Judon. I know both of us touched upon it a little bit, but 4 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for losses, 3 quarterback hits, and then just those little things that don't show up in the stat sheets. He's by far your best player. I think he should be in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. I don't think he'll ultimately get it just because of the way he plays, how a lot of his stuff doesn't show up on the stat sheet, whereas for instance, which we'll get to in a little bit, but Diggs, for instance, with Dallas has 6 interceptions or something like that. But he's been one of the best defenders in all of football this year. Number 2 is definitely Big Kick Nick. So I know before when we were talking about a little bit, you didn't have him on yours. So I was a little disappointed when you added him, but he definitely has to be on it. He's been over the last year and a half, probably even last 2 years, dating back to when they signed him, he's probably been your most consistent player. I think in his entirety with the Patriots, he missed, I think, 2 or 3 kicks his first year, which 2 of them were in bad weather.
Mhm.
And then he hit all the rest. Last year, he missed 2 of his first 3, and they were long kicks and kind of not great weather, but not bad weather. And then he's just made everything else except the 56-yarder last week in the rain. So 4 for 4, 2 52-yarders, just automatic. And pretty much, if he's going out to kick, that you pretty much trust that he's going to make it, which I think this, even the Texans game sort of gives some credibility to why Bill wanted to kick it in that instance, because he's been your best. Typically, you want to with the game on the line, you put it in your best player's hands, or in this instance, foot, and he's just been automatic where the Patriots defense was playing well, and that if he's going to make anything, like, he has a good shot at making it. And it was close, the kick against Tampa, right off the upright. I was surprised it was even that close, but he's just been dependable, like you said, one of the best kicking streaks that we've seen in some time, maybe ever in Patriots history. I know statistically it is the best ever, but just in considering you have Adam Vinatieri, who's going to be potentially a first ballot Hall of Famer, Stephen Gostkowski, who might have had some issues down at the end of his career, but with the Patriots, but statistically one of the best kickers in NFL history. And then seeing what Nick Folk is doing and how it's even better compared to them is just impressive.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a little bit of a cheating. I have I have actually 4 up this week. I have one that's just was one of my 3 down last week, which is the whole Patriots offensive line.
Yep.
Just considering all the stories going into the week, going into the game, how you're missing 4 starters and you have 4 backups going, and the offensive line has been the Patriots' weak spot all year, how they only allowed 3 hits, 1 sack. Granted, it was against Houston, but even against Houston with that 4 backups, that's very impressive. Then the other one has to go Hunter Henry. I know he had the touchdown against Tampa, but felt like his coming out game. 6 catches, 75 yards, a touchdown, some big catches on 3rd down. And it seemed like when Mac needed to make a play, he was looking Henry's way and he was able to catch it. And then I do have a couple just quick honorable mentions, like Mac Jones. Like you said, I think he was definitely excellent again. I know Gasper doesn't think he's the quarterback of the future or anything, but I think Mac has shown that he's great so far. And he played well against Houston. And then another one, just a small caveat, is Christian Barmore. He had some good pressures, and he was able to get 2 big holding penalties that helped the Patriots defense. So those were my 6 up.
Yeah. Actually, I think you mentioned something I wanted to kind of get on to, which we didn't really have our notes for this, but just the Gasper, what the hell has been going on with him lately? It seems like he's going into this Felger mindset where he has to be completely opposite of what everyone's saying, where he says he's not the quarterback of the future. Then he's saying the Patriots don't think highly of him. And then he's saying that he should have thrown like 7 or 8 interceptions. And then he's fighting with everyone on Twitter. I don't know what's going on with him. And then I think it's funny that if you were just watching a bunch of the other well-known football beat guys and commentators completely disagree with Gasper. And then Bedard had said the other day he thought, oh, maybe Chris is some merit. So he talked to a bunch of his Patriots insider sources and was laughed at when he was asked about if they were down to Mac Jones at all. So I just don't know what's really going on with Gasper's kind of opinions lately and what he's actually really trying to do. I don't know if he's trying to just get clicks or if he's trying to be a Felger wannabe or whatnot.
Yeah, I've never been a big Gasper fan, to be honest. I've always felt he's had, never to this extreme, but he's always like that anti, like trying sort of like a Felger or Shaughnessy wannabe, where he's just trying to say the opposite to rile people up and get those clicks. Then also seeing how it is successful for some national guys. If you look at like Colin Cowherds of the world, Nick Wrights, Max Kellerman's, Skip Bayless's, all those people, they're saying all these like outrageous things to get clicks. I wonder if that's his way of doing it, or if he actually believes it, which if that's the case, then he's obviously not watching football or watching the game.
All right. Let's move on to our 3 down.
Yep.
So I'll go with my 3 again and just explain them, then we can go to yours. So
Yep.
first one, Devin McCourty, Kyle Duggar, and then I am blanking on my last one, which I had. So I'll explain
JW.
McCourty. Oh yeah, Joanne Williams. So I'm glad I actually discussed earlier before who mine were. I still don't know yours, so it'll be a little bit of a surprise for me. But so Devin McCourty was probably one of the worst games I've actually seen him play with this team, at least in the last 2 seasons. Maybe overall, he just looked really bad against this team. Hopefully, it's just a one-off and not something that's further coming down. He is, I think, 32, so he is an aging safety, and hopefully it's not his legs going on him, which would be a kind of a bad deal. But hopefully it's just kind of a one-off. But he did not really
He's
look
34,
well.
FYI.
34. Wow. Well, then it could be more of an issue. So I'm hoping it's not more of an issue, and that it was just a really bad day. But we may want to keep an eye on him based on this. He just did not look well. Kyle Duggar is both you and me really like him a lot, but he is still struggling in coverage and space. So when he's rushing the passer, if he's trying to break up the run, he's been really well with that. That's something that's his size and his speed has been pretty well at. It's just something that is probably going to take him time. The playing faster in space and coverage. I think it's something that he needs to adjust more for him, which makes sense just based on that level of college he was coming from to the NFL. He wasn't coming from like Alabama. He was coming from, I think it was a D2 school or something along those lines. So I think that's where we're seeing that biggest kind of gap, and something he needs to still work on, needs to get better at quickly, just because he needs to play better in space. He needs to have better route recognition, something that he's kind of a liability in coverage, whereas Phillips, when he's out there, he's going to make the play. Duggar was not really well in this game with that. And then the last point, Joanne Williams, again, when he came out of the game, they played a lot better, and he just did not look great in this game. Didn't look good in the flea flick. I'm not going to kind of give them too much against him on that, just because it was a trick play, but he did have coverage on him, and then even once he knew it was a flea flicker, that's when he froze. So I'm not really sure what kind of happened there, but he's been kind of really all over the place this year. He's had a good game. He's had a couple bad games. So I don't really know what to fully think of him. I'm leaning towards that he's kind of a bust, where we've seen this a lot with second round corners from Belichick. I've always hoped that he was going to be better, just because he's got the size, and that's something that you really want to see with a corner, size and speed. So, but he's just, I really don't know what to think about him right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I guess with my 3 down, my number 1 has to be JC Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
So in the game, he allowed 4 of 6 for 90 yards, a touchdown, and a passer rating of 141. And then he also had pass interference and a defensive holding penalty. And then last 2 games, 10 of 18, 165 yards and a touchdown. I think one thing that was on the broadcast was a little unfair was they were blaming him for that touchdown that he gave up, which I don't really think it was his fault. He made a good play on the ball.
That was
Receiver made a
McCourty's
great
fault.
play. Yeah, 100% McCourty's fault. I have no idea what he was doing on that. He just it looked like he was expecting it to be overthrown and was going for the interception, where the receiver caught the ball, which if he was playing the receiver and not playing the ball, he would have tackled him. But instead, since he ran by him, it allowed the touchdown. So I blame that a lot more on McCourty. I thought JC Jackson made a play on the ball. Wasn't perfect coverage, but at least wasn't bad coverage either, especially since he knew he had the safety over the top. But besides that, penalties, allowing some of the catches, especially after trading Stephon Gilmore, JC Jackson's now the number 1 cornerback, and you have to expect better production from your number 1. And especially with us going up against the Cowboys next week, or this upcoming Sunday, he has to perform better than he did on Sunday. And Jackson's been inconsistent this year. Last year, He should have been an all-pro corner. He wasn't, but also part of that was he had Stephon Gilmore on the other side, so he wasn't going up against the number one cornerbacks. So it just makes you wonder: who is he going to be? Is he really going to be a number one corner? And then there are implications for the rest of the season, but also when it gets to the offseason. If he's not consistent, do you sign him to be your number one corner going forward, especially with how much money that's going to cost? And if you don't sign him, who's your number one cornerback going to be next year?
Yep.
So I'd say number 2 is Joanne Williams for everything you just said. Stat wise, only gave up 2 catches, but 2 catches for 77 yards, a touchdown, and a perfect passer rating against him. Just looked lost a lot of the game and then was benched. So I don't think I have too much more to elaborate on that you didn't say.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3 is Damian Harris with a caveat. So I thought Harris actually ran the ball the best he has all year. 14 rushes, 58 yards, 4.1 yards per attempt, and a touchdown. And it just looked like he was moving the ball. He was running well. He was breaking tackles. He just kept, when he got contact, he just kept his feet moving and kept going.
Mm-hmm.
He was finding holes and rushing through them. So I actually thought on that aspect, he actually played pretty well. Part of it might have been because the offensive line was playing its best game too. But the reason why he's the 3 down is that lost fumble could have been the reason why they lost this game. 2
Mm-hmm.
fumbles lost inside the 10-yard line, which should have been either touchdowns or field goals at a minimum, probably touchdowns. This one, especially right at the goal line. That's just something you can't have. A fumble is bad anywhere, but especially when you're in red zone territory and either going to get a touchdown or a field goal, that's something you can't allow happen. I know that like he's been historically known for walking around Gillette Stadium with the football and everything, but it makes me wonder. I know the movie that came out in the 90s where the Buffalo Bills won the Super Bowl where they had all backups playing. I forget the name of it. But where the running back in that, since he was a backup, he was holding the ball. The quarterback made him hold the ball going through everywhere. And he told all the teammates, if you see him with the ball, try and punch it out, because he kept fumbling.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped him. I know it's a movie and it's an analogy, but that might be something where it might actually help him if people are coming from behind him and trying to knock the ball out.
Yeah.
Just might help with ball handling skills. I know historically he doesn't have fumbling issues, but those 2 key fumbles are killers.
No, I completely agree. All right. So just going down to kind of news from the league that we get the 3 up, 3 down. I think the first topic overall everyone has been talking about just the John Gruden situation. What were your thoughts and opinions on that?
I guess I'm just surprised at how fast it just transpired. Where last Thursday or maybe even Friday morning, he's the head coach of the Raiders. No issues at all. You could argue if he's a great coach or not, but seemingly no issues going forward. And then before Tuesday morning, he's out of the NFL probably forever. So just how quickly it transpired. Definitely what he said is not right. It's not acceptable. But I think the one aspect that makes you kind of scratch your head is this was an investigation into the Washington football team where there was 650,000 emails based on workplace harassment, workplace issues going on. The only thing we've heard that has come out of it is from someone that wasn't an employee of the team, wasn't an employee of the NFL, and was using this from a private email. I'm not by any means defending him at all, but it makes you wonder, like, what is that? Does the NFL have an agenda where the investigation is about one of their owners, Dan Snyder? This is a league that is run by the owners and nothing's coming out about him, but it's coming out where it makes you wonder, did John Gruden do something to piss off the NFL where they have this sort of as blackmail, for instance, to use against him? I know one of the emails was him criticizing Roger Goodell. Did Roger Goodell see that and didn't like it, so he used that against him and kept feeding the league? And then also, it just makes you wonder, what is there something the NFL is hiding, or is there more damning evidence? There's something that they showed about John Gruden that was bad. Even Adam Schefter, something came out about him having someone in the Reds or the football team organization just read through an article that he had. It wasn't any damning piece or anything. It was just like, do you have anything that you would change? So two people that aren't NFL employees, aren't coaches or anything in the NFL at the time, it's coming out against them. It makes you wonder, what does the league actually have on the Dan Snyder or anyone else that actually works for the Washington football team?
Both ESPN employees at the time too. I think I come from the same point with you. I think what Gruden said was something that he had to leave the team. It's not something that you can lead the team knowing that you've said kind of those things, especially with Nassib in the team. And I think it's something that's really kind of affected him too. Knowing it came from Gruden, someone that he really respected. So it is not the terms that he used were unacceptable. But it also, the thing, like I agree with you with the NFL, is these were personal emails, and you think, well, this was kind of the same sort of thing as texting back in the day, because if you think about it, 2010 texting only started coming around then when it got really big. It was around for a few years beforehand, but emails were probably the primary mode of kind of communication. So just think of it as if someone was going through his personal phone. It doesn't make it right or him in the right for saying this sort of thing, but it also doesn't make the NFL right to go through this kind of information and release that too. So especially as now that seems like it was more agenda driven than actually trying to right the wrong. It looks like it's a cover up for something else. What are they trying to hide? There's something. They have 650,000 emails. Is there something bad about Snyder? Is there bad about another owner that they're trying to cover for? Or is Roger just upset about Gruden from what he read on his own, and he was like, I'm just gonna get rid of him? But at that point, what other emails are they holding over other people's heads? So it goes down a slippery slope, which does not look good for the NFL.
Yeah, and then the other thing with it is, yes, what Gruden said was not right, but it also seemed like they knew that they didn't really have much leeway that they could suspend him, because he wasn't an NFL employee, and it was from a private personal email address. But it was pretty much giving the Raiders, by them initially leaking it, they wanted the Raiders to take action and fire him. But when they didn't after the first email, they released more emails showing more things that he said. And there were reports coming out that they were planning on releasing more and more emails until either he resigned or the Raiders fired him. So essentially blackmailing him or the Raiders to do something.
Yeah.
Which kind of shows like the organization of the NFL now.
Yeah. Yeah. It just gives a bad taste in your mouth about both parties. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think we kind of addressed what needs to be addressed there. Jimmy Garoppolo not making the start. Any thoughts on that?
Just glad he's not our Patriots quarterback. So he has a calf bruise, and after the game, he says he thinks he's going to be out a few weeks. And then afterwards, like a couple weeks ago, and then Shanahan said that he might be able to come back, pretty much kind of dismissing the injury. And then he goes through all week of practice, doesn't practice, and then he's declared out, which is, I know we discussed this last week, but your NFL career is potentially on the line as a starter. And if you're not able to come back from a bruise, then how can any other team, either the current team you're on or a future prospective team, really value you as a NFL quarterback? So he misses the game. And then Trey Lance doesn't play great, but he's also a rookie, so you're not really expecting too much of him. And then Trey Lance has a knee sprain, either a knee sprain or slight tear. I forgot which one. But so he got that, and then they have a bye this week. It's interesting to see if Jimmy will actually come back for the next week, having 2 weeks off from a bruise, or if Lance, with a more severe injury, is able to come back before Jimmy. If that's the case, then that's really telling of Jimmy, and I don't think any team will give him a shot as a starting quarterback. They might sign him as a backup, but if Lance is able to play before Jimmy with a more severe injury, then I don't see any team in the near future planning on having him be their starting quarterback.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think that we kind of talked about this a lot last week, but Yeah, I think just the toughness that he's not showing is really kind of off-putting, and I'm glad that we don't have him, because a lot of the hits that Mac had taken this year would probably have knocked Jimmy out for at least 6 weeks. So knowing that makes me happy that we have Mac instead. And just the other thing, teams like the Steelers, teams like let's say the Texans, teams that may be looking for a quarterback after this year, teams like the Packers, maybe if depending on how they feel about their quarterback situation, it would probably have to think twice now if they wanted to give Jimmy an offer, and something I probably would be really hesitant to give based on just his injury history and his willingness to play through something. But I think we talked about Jimmy a lot. Just going on to just other competitors in the AFC this week. Any news of note that you saw in games that really caught your eye?
I'd say the Chargers game caught my eye. I know the Chargers last year, they were very talented, but their coaching staff was horrendous. So they were a very talented team that finished the year either 6-10 or 7-9. But Herbert really looked like the real deal last year, and it looks like he's just taking that next step this year. They were able to be a very good Browns team, and I think that if they're able to stay healthy, I think they have a shot of. You would think going into the year that they'd possibly be contending for a wild card spot, but with considering how bad the Chiefs have played this year, mixed with how well the Chargers are playing, they might have a shot of either winning the division or even being the number 1 seed in the AFC. I know right now they're one of 3 teams that are 4-1, them, Buffalo, and the Ravens. I think they definitely have some holes on defense, but their offense is explosive enough, and Herbert looks like he's taking that next step this year. So they have impressed me so far, and I think in a couple weeks the Patriots are going to have some tough games where they're going up against both the Chargers and the Browns, 2 teams that very, very well should either win their division or contend for their division. Ravens moved to 4-1. They should have lost the game, but I think you're going to discuss it a little bit because you have some feelings on the Colts game, but they're 4-1. They look very well. That was probably the best game Lamar Jackson has ever played. And it just wonders if he's able to play like that as a quarterback going forward, they might be able to do some damage. But they also have won a lot of their games close. So it makes you wonder, they are 4-1, but they really should have lost this game against the Colts. They should have lost the game against the Lions. So they really could easily be 2-3 or even 1-4. Buffalo Bills just demolished the Chiefs, and I think that kind of shows that makes us worried because I know you and me are both we weren't big fans of Josh Allen for the last 3.5 years, but he's looking more and more like he's the real deal. We'll have to see against bigger teams, but it looks like he might be, and if that's the case, that's going to be some trouble for the Patriots. And then the Chiefs, I know they just haven't been playing well. It's early, and I know a lot of times the Patriots don't start the year well either, so it might just be that aspect, but it's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. That Chargers Browns game was a really good game and back and forth. And it's actually really smart of the Browns near the end of the game to actually carry Eckler into the end zone. So that way they would have a chance to come back to try and win the game. So that was a really intriguing game to kind of watch the highlights from and see afterwards. And I think Herbert, like you said, he's probably going to be one of the top quarterbacks in the league to come for the next 10, 15 years. So the Dolphins are probably really kicking themselves right now.
I was just going to bring that up.
Knowing that they have someone that can barely throw the ball, who's not a great quarterback, knowing that they could have had Herbert instead. And then just the Ravens Colts game. I texted you during the game. I said that the Colts are going to lose this game. And this is when they were before they even missed the field goal to try and go up by 2 scores. So near the end of the game when they were in the probably the 30-ish yard line, they ran it 3 straight times. Even on 3rd and 10, they ran trying to run the clock down more, but they still had 5 or 6 minutes left in the game. So you still need to try and compete just because this Ravens offense can come back. And they were trying to play the clock game, go up by a field goal. When you have a kicker that's looked iffy throughout the game and has a hip injury, so knowing that he hasn't looked that good this game, that he has that hip injury, and trying to just play for the field goal, I don't think was the smart play there. And I could tell, I was like, well, if going for this field goal is going to cost them the game, because they're going to have enough time, they can come back, especially the second they missed that field goal. I said that they'll definitely lose the game, because whenever you play not to lose, that's when you lose. So that was something I was really just not impressed with the Colts coaching staff there. And then the Chiefs, it's something we have to keep an eye on. Just their defense looks atrocious. It looks like one of the worst defenses they've had, and one of the worst defenses in the league right now. So if they don't get that together, it's going to be really tough for Mahomes to try and put everything on his shoulders this year, especially because he looks like he's hurt. He looks like he's dealing with something. So I'm not sure what that is, but it should be a really interesting next few weeks going down for the league. Now,
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just want to add a couple more things on this point. But one thing with the Chiefs is, like you said, their defense is horrendous. They're allowing a touchdown, I believe, on 45% of their defensive possessions that they're going against. So if you're allowing that much points, it's tough for any offense, even as good as the Chiefs offense, to score points. Another couple things is a lot of defenses are taking away those long passes from the Chiefs and Mahomes, which has been Mahomes' bread and butter the past 2.5, 3 years. He actually has less completions of 20 yards or more than Mac Jones and Tyler Heineke. And then another thing is Mahomes has always been more of like a Brett Favre type of sling it and just hope that someone gets it. And considering how good Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce is, that historically he's usually been well, but in the last 2 years, he's only thrown 5 interceptions each year. He already has 6 through 5 games this year. I know last year either last year or the year before, he led the league in most interceptable balls dropped with 16 or 17. It just seems like at least this year, he's just not getting that luck that the last few years he's gotten. And then another thing, just wanted to briefly mention, is like the Patriots' path forward. So I know we discussed this a little bit last week, how they started the year 1-3. So it's going to be tough for them to go forward. So at least in my opinion, I think in the AFC North, either the Ravens or the Browns are going to win the division. And then who doesn't win the division is going to take one of the wild card spots. In the AFC South, Titans are probably going to win the division. AFC West, I think either the Chargers or the Chiefs will win the division. I think the Chiefs ultimately figure it out, but whoever doesn't win the division, I think is ultimately going to get one of the other wild card spots. Right now, it looks like Bills are probably going to win the AFC East. So Patriots' path forward after starting 1-3 is they have to go for that last wild card spot. And based on who's playing well, it looks like it's going to come down to either them, who's right now 2-3, Bengals, who are 3-2, Steelers, who are 2-3, or Raiders, who are 3-2. But ultimately, with the Raiders' issues, I think it's really going to come down to the Pats and the Bengals. And Joe Burrow has been playing unbelievable so far.
Yep. I think that's a good point, and it should be a really interesting part to the game, unless the Bills kind of crumble. So I'm not willing to write off, not really write off, but write up kind of Josh Allen yet, just because it's still early on. And we've seen him crumble when games get really important. So I'm still kind of cross my fingers that that still happens, but it's looking a little less likely at this point, but we'll stand to see. So I'd just like to talk a little bit about the upcoming game against Dallas. What are your kind of thoughts for this game? Where you see this going for this team?
Yeah, so I think that's a good something good that we need to talk about is it depends on, I think the thing with the Cowboys is they have one of the best offenses in football. I believe right now they have, let me see, they have the second most yards per game at 439 yards per game. They're only 1 yard per game behind Baltimore, who's first. They're 11th in passing, but they do have Dak, who's a pretty solid quarterback. Some might say he's top 10, top 7. And then they have good weapons on offense with CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper as wide receivers. They're second in rushing. Ezekiel Elliott, even though it looks like he's not the same running back, he's still been playing well. And then Tony Pollard. And they have second most rushing yards. They're averaging 173 yards per game rushing. And the Patriots, through the first 5 games, their weak spot on defense has been their run defense. So this is going to be a big challenge for them. They're Dallas is second in rushing behind Cleveland. And then they also have the second most points per game at 34, only behind Buffalo. So defense is definitely going to have their hands full this game. However, as good as the Cowboys offense is, their defense is almost as bad this year. They're allowing the second most passing yards allowed, 8th most total yards, 4th most yards per play, 5th least pressure percentage, which is at least good going into this game for the Patriots because outside of last week, their offensive line has been pretty bad. They have the 8th most missed tackles, and then they're also the most penalized defense in football. So Patriots offense, if Josh McDaniels allows Mac to sling it and just open up the offense a little more for him, I think it should be a close game. It just means that the Patriots, one of their issues so far this year on offense is they're not able to convert for touchdowns when they get inside the 35. A lot of times they have to settle for field goals. In this game, you have to convert those inside the 35-yard drives, and you have to get touchdowns on those. One issue which makes me a little concerned that Josh isn't going to open up the offense for Mac is just that even though Dallas's defense does have all these issues, they are leading the league in interceptions. Stefon Diggs' brother, leads the league in interceptions with 6 interceptions, and Dallas overall as a defense has the most interceptions in football. So I wonder if that might make Josh a little hesitant to fully open up the offense a little more. It might play a little cautious, but I think considering everything else, they need to start opening up the offense a little more, especially with Dallas's, outside of interceptions, Dallas's deficiencies on defense.
Yep. Yeah, and I think we're probably going to see kind of a similar type of game plan that we saw against the Bucs, where they're trying to kind of limit the amount of touches that the Cowboys offense gets, just because that's their strength of this team. So trying to keep the ball in our hands, limit the amount of touches they have, thus limiting the amount of points they can get. I think the 2 biggest things I'd be worried about on defense would be, again, Trevon Diggs, like you mentioned. Also, Micah Parsons has been really good for them too. So kind of just keeping aware of those 2 players. But other than that, they're going to have to open up Jones on this game, just based on the amount of points they're probably going to need to realistically score in the high 20s to 30s to make this a game, just based on how good that offense is. But if they are really able to kind of limit the amount of points that they get, they can maybe get away with the 20s. So I think it will be a really good game. If they didn't have the kind of showing that they had against the Bucs, I would be more worried about this, and I'd be picking the Cowboys. But based on everything I've seen, based on the way that they're trending, the way that they've faced the Bucs, the way that they're kind of playing up to the talent that they're competing against each week, I'd be picking the Patriots in this game. So I think right now the Cowboys are projected by 4. Over under for this game is at 50. My projection for this game, 31-27, lock it in. Patriots win. 2 field goals for the Cowboys, 3 touchdowns. And it sounds like, based off that sigh, that might be the exact same score you might have had. But I think they're going to have to open up Mac a little bit more. They get 4 touchdowns, 1 field goal. Nick Folk, 1 for 1 again, continuing his streak in the right direction. What do you see?
Yeah, so I agree completely. I had the exact same score. I think Patriots get 1 more touchdown, and then they're able to hold the Cowboys to an additional field goal. So I think 31-27 as well. Some just other caveats is, historically, Dallas, I'd say over the last year being an outlier just because of Dak getting hurt, but last few years, Dallas has actually been one of the most talented teams in football. It's just their coaching, the organizational structure, they just can't win those big games.
Yep.
And I know both of us aren't a big fan of Mike McCarthy. He's not really a great coach. So I wonder if that's
Yeah.
going to factor into it as well. Where going into this game on paper, Dallas should beat the Patriots. But I think the Patriots are trending in the right direction. I think they're better than their record indicates. But also, I think just Bill versus Mike McCarthy, I think that's definitely advantage Patriots. And it's just they always seem to shut down the Cowboys. I know 2019 when we played the Cowboys, Cowboys were very talented, and I know it was raining. It was a very heavy rain, but they just completely shut down Dallas. And I just think I don't know if they'll shut them down like that, especially considering some of the deficiencies on defense the Patriots have had so far. But I think that should be something to keep in mind, that Dallas usually never plays up to their potential. So I think Patriots, I think it's going to be a close game. Like I said, I think it's going to be 31-27. Based on that, I'd pick Patriots to cover or for the spread, and I also would go with the over.
Yep. Yeah, I think McCarthy was the other thing I completely forgot to mention as well. Just something I was thinking of this whole week. It's a complete coaching mismatch. McCarthy, I don't think highly of at all. He's had a lot of mistakes or mental blunders with the Packers, and then again this year, even with the clock, in this I think week 2 or 3, where he kind of bungled the whole clock timeout situation. And if the kicker didn't make I think it was a 56-yard field goal, it would have been completely on McCarthy for the reason that they would have lost that game. But other than that, I think the other thing I kind of mentioned about too is just they have to kind of contain Dak, and I think running quarterbacks or mobile quarterbacks have been something they've struggled with a little bit. That if they have the ability to throw as well, if it's like Lamar Jackson where he's mostly a running quarterback, they actually been pretty good at containing him. But that dual threat is something that's they've struggled with a little bit. So hopefully they'll be able to contain him and run the right kind of scheme to contain the wide receivers as well.
Yeah, I think the one thing with Dak though is, at least this year, is due to his injury, he's not running as much as he historically does. I think typically he is mobile and he's able to run if he needs to, but he's not the same as like a Cam Newton or Russell Wilson or something like that. But I think also considering his injury, he might be more of a pocket passer. He still does run. I just looked it up now. He has 60 rushing yards through 5 games so far, but so 12 yards per game compared to his like historical average of around 20. But just I think if they're able to keep him in the pocket and get some pressure on him, I think that they'll have a decent shot. They just also have to stop the run, which has been their biggest issue the last 3 years.
Yeah. But if that means even if they do give up rushing yards, but they will limit the rest of the offense, that might be the sacrifice they might be willing to take.
Yeah, and then as long as they're able to, even if they allow those rushing yards, but just like they did against the Bucks, just let them get yards, kill the clock, but just hold them to field goals instead of touchdowns.
Yeah, no, agree completely. And with that note, looks like we're out of time for today. Just like to thank everyone for listening. Again, we can be followed at Pat's 300 level pod on Twitter and Instagram. And then just remember to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or Spotify, and keep us going. Thank you very much, and listen to us next week.